The murder that toppled a king, a century-old crime that shook an empire. Imagine a murder so scandalous, so entangled in power and forbidden love, that it forced a king to give up his throne. A crime so sensational that it captivated an entire nation, sparked international headlines, and even inspired one of Bollywood's earliest films. This is not fiction. This is the true story of the Baula murder case, a century-old mystery that unfolded on the streets of colonial Bombay, and it all began on a seemingly ordinary evening 100 years ago. January 12, 1925. The sun was setting over Malabar Hill, one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Bombay, where the Arabian Sea whispered against the shoreline and only the wealthiest could afford to drive the rare automobiles that graced those roads. On that evening, a young man named Abdul Qadir Baula was driving through those streets with a woman by his side. Baula was only 25 years old, but he had already made a name for himself as an influential cloth merchant and the youngest municipal official in the entire city. The woman beside him was Mumtaz Begum, 22 years old, known throughout India for her extraordinary beauty. She was described as possessing a kind of beauty that belonged in a class of its own, unparalleled and unforgettable. But Mumtaz Begum carried a dangerous secret. She was a fugitive from a royal harem, a woman who had escaped the clutches of a powerful Maharaja, and now she was living with Baula, under his protection. For months, threatening messages had arrived, warning Baula of serious consequences if he continued to shelter her. He ignored them all. As their car moved through the twilight, another vehicle suddenly appeared behind them, speeding up, overtaking them with aggressive intent. Before anyone in Baula's car could react, the pursuing vehicle rammed into them, forcing them to stop. The doors flew open. Men emerged, their faces twisted with rage, hurling abuse at Baula. Witnesses would later recall hearing them shout, "Get the woman out!" And then, gunfire shattered the evening calm. Baula was shot. Mumtaz Begum was struck in the face, bleeding and screaming. The attackers tried to drag her from the car, their mission clear: this was not just murder. This was an attempted kidnapping, an act of reclaiming what someone powerful believed belonged to him. By pure chance, a group of British soldiers returning from a golf game had taken a wrong turn and heard the gunshots echoing through the air. They rushed toward the scene, managing to capture one of the attackers in the chaos. But not before one of their own was shot in the exchange. The remaining attackers fled into the night, but not before making two more desperate attempts to snatch Mumtaz Begum from the British officers who were now trying to get her to a hospital. Abdul Qadir Baula died hours later. And with his death, one of the most sensational criminal cases in British India began to unfold, layer by layer, revealing a story of love, lust, power, and betrayal that would reach all the way to the throne of a king. In the days following the murder, newspapers across India and around the world seized upon the story with fervor. The Illustrated Weekly offered readers exclusive photographs of Mumtaz Begum. Police issued daily bulletins to the press. The case became the talk of every street corner, every tea house, every drawing room in the country. Within months, Bollywood had already produced a silent film based on the murder, capitalizing on the public's insatiable appetite for this real-life drama. This was 1925 years before India's first talking picture would emerge, but the story was so compelling that it needed no words to captivate audiences. But why? What made this case so extraordinary that it transcended the ordinary boundaries of a murder investigation? The answer lay in the three central figures: a rich young merchant, a Maharaja, and a woman of legendary beauty whose past was as mysterious as it was dangerous. The investigation moved quickly. The one attacker captured at the scene, a man named Shafi Ahmed, began to talk. His confession led Bombay police to the central Indian princely state of Indore, a powerful kingdom allied with the British Raj. And there, investigators discovered something that would send shockwaves through the colonial administration: Mumtaz Begum had once been part of the harem of Maharaja Tukoji Holkar III, the Hindu king of Indore. Her story, as it emerged in court testimony, was one of captivity and desperation. Mumtaz Begum told the Bombay High Court that she had been kept under constant surveillance in Indore, never allowed to meet her family or visitors alone. Someone was always watching, always listening. The Maharaja's control over her was absolute, suffocating. She had given birth to a baby girl during her time in the palace, but the child died shortly after birth. In her testimony, Mumtaz Begum made a chilling accusation: "I was not ready to live in Indore after the birth of the baby girl. I was not ready because the nurses had killed the baby girl." Whether this was true or the traumatized perception of a grieving mother, we may never know. But what is certain is that Mumtaz Begum could no longer bear her life in that golden cage. Within months of her daughter's death, she escaped, fleeing hundreds of miles north to Amritsar, her mother's birthplace. The journey was perilous, filled with hardships she would later recount. But even in Amritsar, she was not free. The Maharaja's agents were watching, following her movements, pressuring her family. Her stepfather testified that the Maharaja had sent emissaries who pleaded and threatened, demanding her return. She refused. So she ran again, this time to Bombay, the great bustling port city where she hoped to disappear among millions. But even there, surveillance continued. And then she met Abdul Qadir Baula, perhaps at a performance where her beauty and presence commanded every eye in the room. He offered her shelter. He offered her protection. And for that kindness, for that defiance of a king's will, he would pay with his life. As investigators arrested 7 more suspects in Indore, a disturbing pattern emerged. Nearly all of them were employees of the princely state. They had all applied for leave at the exact same time. They had all been in Bombay on the night of the murder. The evidence pointed in one unmistakable direction: this was not the work of random criminals. This was a conspiracy that originated in a royal palace, planned with precision, executed with the resources of a kingdom. The British colonial government found itself in an impossible position. The murder had occurred in Bombay, British territory, under British law. But the conspiracy led directly to Indore, a princely state that was technically autonomous, ruled by a Maharaja who was a key ally of the British Raj. The New Statesman, an English daily newspaper, called it a very strange affair and noted that if this had been any ordinary state, the British government would have had no particular cause for concern. But Indore, as they wrote, has been a powerful fiefdom of the Raj. At first, the British government tried to keep the connection to Indore quiet, hoping to handle the matter discreetly. But the evidence was overwhelming, and pressure was mounting from every direction. Bombay Police Commissioner Patrick Kelly sent clear, unambiguous reports to the British government stating that all evidence pointed to a conspiracy hatched in Indore to either murder Baula or kidnap Mumtaz Begum using hired assassins. The Mayman community, to which Baula belonged, demanded justice. His fellow municipal officials expressed their grief and insisted that there must be something behind the scenes. Indian lawmakers raised questions in the legislature. The matter was even debated in the British House of Commons in London. This was no longer just an Indian affair. This was an international scandal. There were reports of pressure on investigators to go easy, to look the other way, to protect the powerful. But Police Commissioner Kelly, to his credit, threatened to resign if such pressure continued. The investigation would proceed. Justice would be sought. When the case finally reached the Bombay High Court, it attracted the finest legal minds in the country. Both the prosecution and defense assembled teams of brilliant lawyers, knowing that the world was watching. Among these lawyers was a man named Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who would later become the founder and father of Pakistan after the partition of India in 1947. In 1925, however, he was simply one of the most skilled advocates in the country. Jinnah defended Anand Rio Gangaram Fans, a high-ranking general in the Indore army who stood accused of conspiracy to murder. And Jinnah succeeded. His client escaped the death penalty. In the end, the court sentenced 3 men to death and 3 others to life imprisonment. But as for the Maharaja himself, the puppet master behind the curtain, the court stopped short of direct prosecution. Justice L.C. Crump, who presided over the trial, wrote words that were both damning and carefully diplomatic. There were people behind him whom we cannot clearly identify. But as far as the attempted kidnapping of a woman who had been in the harem of the Maharaja of Indore for 10 years is concerned, it is not unreasonable to view Indore as having been the source of the attack. In other words, everyone knew. Everyone understood. But naming a king, holding a Maharaja accountable, was a step too dangerous for colonial justice to take directly. Instead, the British government presented Maharaja Tukoji Rio Holkar III with a choice: face a full commission of inquiry that would publicly investigate his role in the murder, or abdicate the throne in favour of his son. The Maharaja chose to give up his crown. In his letter to the British government, he wrote, "I am abdicating my throne in favour of my son with the understanding that no further inquiry will be made into my alleged connection with the Malabar Hill tragedy." And just like that, a murder investigation had toppled a king. But the story did not end there. The Maharaja, now a private citizen, stirred up fresh controversy by insisting on marrying an American woman, defying the wishes of his family and community. According to British Home Office reports, the American woman eventually converted to Hinduism, and they married, living out their days in a scandal that never quite faded. As for Mumtaz Begum, the woman at the center of this entire tragedy, her fate took an unexpected turn. Hollywood came calling. The legendary beauty who had captivated a Maharaja, inspired a murder, and transfixed a nation received offers from American film studios. She traveled to America, hoping to find a new life under